Mike said to me, hey, my dad is looking for someone to help raise capital for The Chosen. They had raised $11 million from 16,000 people in 2019 to shoot the first season, but they're unsure on how they're going to fund season 2. So I think you'd be perfect at this. So would you like to talk to my dad?
Welcome to Elevate Utah. I'm Court Brady, your host, and today we have Adam Swerdlow with us. Pumped to have you, Adam.
Thank you, man. Pleasure to be here.
Quick introduction of Adam. You're founder, COO, CEO, keynote speaker, advisor, and you help founders and builders build and scale their companies.
That's correct.
You were the COO of The Chosen, the TV show, The Chosen, that everyone knows.
Well, they should know it if they don't.
Yes. You were the chief operating officer.
That's correct.
I'm so pumped to get into a ton of that. And since then, you founded Alpine Consulting.
That's correct.
And you guys help businesses with a suite of problems. So strategic growth initiatives, operational excellence, efficiency, go-to-market, talent acquisition, anything that they need to scale their business. Alpine Consulting, you guys are
in my team. Yeah.
The team to go to.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, can we start with The Chosen? How did you get a job there?
Great question. I could boil down me sitting here with you to one decision I made in 2011. So in 2011, I was having, I don't want to say midlife crisis because it wasn't even close to midlife. I'm 40 now. I'm probably midlife crisis territory now.
You look young.
Thank you. I was deciding the path of my career. So the two paths that were in front of me was become a financial advisor for Northwestern Mutual or work for CBRE, which is the biggest commercial real estate company in the world. My dad was an executive there, so it would have been very easy for me to go and work in the New York City office. I won't take you through the decision-making process, but I decided to become a financial advisor at Northwestern Mutual. And you start with nothing, man. We talked earlier before we started about door knocking. This is door knocking, the epitome of door knocking, right? You can do it physically, but you're also calling people on the phone. And so I built a business, a financial planning practice. I sold a lot of life insurance, disability insurance, long-term care insurance, investments. Built up an investment book. 5 years into my tenure at Northwestern Mutual, that's when I decided to move to California. And it was very easy for me to transition my business. I was out of the first 5-year window, which is like a critical point in that career where 95% of people fail out in the first 5 years. So if you make it to that mark, most likely you're going to survive. So I moved my business out to California, did 3 more years there and left, and started a consulting company then as well called the Financial Advisors Alliance. We were in business to help financial advisors think about their practice in other ways, sell products that they may not be familiar with, market to their, not only to their customer base, but also to prospects in a different way than they had been doing it before. When you work for a financial institution, it's very restrictive on the ways that you can advertise. And so we kind of had some ones that were not only compliant, but effective in landing new clienteles. And then we also found out that these financial advisors are great asset gatherers, but they're not good business owners. And there's a ton of needs that the business has besides gathering assets. One of my business development strategies was using an app that you may be familiar with called Loom, where you can screen record and whatnot. So I used to put my face on your LinkedIn profile and tell you all the ways that I could help you just based off of what I saw on your LinkedIn. I had customized videos where I would mention your name and the practice that you were at, or I would send an evergreen one that was generic that I could blast out. And this is when LinkedIn didn't catch on to the automated bots where I could just sit there and a bot would go through adding people and sending the video out. So I could send out 100 messages easy in a day before getting my account flagged. And this was before AI really took off.
Yes, it's genius.
Yeah.
This is all the tactics that people are like, hey, we could do this on AI and send out 5,000. And it's like, you were doing that before everyone else is doing it. So I'm sure it's highly effective.
It worked. It did work. We landed a bunch of clients where we had to find people to fulfill the contracts that we were getting because we got overloaded. So good problem to have. But I landed a client in Provo, Utah, who runs the Northwestern Mutual office down in Provo. Shout out to Mike Pello. I landed Shane Waller first. Shane referred me to Mike, who is Shane's boss, who runs the office down in Provo. This was about 2020, so this was right in the middle of COVID. Wasn't looking for anything, and Mike said to me, "Hey, my dad, Brad Pello, well known in the community here, is looking for someone to help raise capital for The Chosen." They had raised $11 million from 16,000 people in 2019 to shoot the first season, but they're unsure on how they're going to fund season 2. So I think you'd be perfect at this. You have your licenses, you have business knowledge, you have free agency. So would you like to talk to my dad? I said, sure. I never turned down an opportunity to have a conversation, probably why I'm here. And so I took the opportunity to have a conversation with his dad, and they hired me about 2 weeks later.
To be the COO or to be the fundraiser?
To be the fundraiser.
Okay.
Yeah. So I remember negotiating the contract, and it was a 12-month contract, and it was only to raise capital. And they gave me the title of COO because FINRA, which is the governing body of financial advisors, says that I could not have any title that had finance to do with it. So it couldn't be chief investment officer. It couldn't be chief financial officer. It had to be chief operating officer. So it was a little serendipitous. So I signed the deal to raise capital, and I've told this to people, but I didn't know what I was doing. And this was, I knew generally, but I had never built a Regulation A capital raise, which is what it was.
It's amazing how many people sat in that chair and said that exact thing of an opportunity presented itself, and they had no idea what they were doing. And I don't know if you're going to follow it up with this, but we are all too ignorant to stop. Like, to think, if I would have known like how hard this is going to be and how much work it is going to take and all of the things to overcome, probably would have said no at the outset.
Maybe. I mean, I loved learning new things and doing many things, and so I think I don't know that I
take it either way.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because I know I could figure it out. I've proven to myself through my childhood that I could figure it out.
Yeah.
One of my acronyms is FIFO, figure it out. You can pick your F word there, but I figured it out. I went through the capital raise process, built the whole thing. This is during COVID, and you have to work a lot with state agencies, and they weren't there. So I had to figure it out. I had to figure out how to get in touch with people. I had to figure out how to put this thing together, and I figured it out. And then as I was figuring it out, I also figured out that there was nobody kind of playing the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain of the company. And I just stepped into areas that needed attention. And I said to myself, season 1 was successful. We're going to go shoot season 2. Someone has to be running this business. Dallas Jenkins, love that guy. He's absolutely brilliant. Brilliant creator, brilliant visionary, and a brilliant writer and showrunner. But he was making the show. Someone needed to run the business. Daryl Eves, another one of the founders, brilliant marketer, and he's actually one of the guys behind Mr. Beast on his rise to fame. He was busy marketing the show, moving and shaking on how to get more people to watch the show. You needed somebody behind the curtain running and pulling the levers, and that was me.
Branding is genius. I'm so curious about that type of business. What did you find that was a unique challenge? So I'm guessing a lot of people that are watching are familiar with The Chosen. Being in Utah, if you're in the South or in Utah, you're probably familiar with The Chosen. And they would, I think, be fascinated, the entrepreneurs, of what's different about running a production company like that versus running an HVAC company, like fill in the blank.
I think no matter the widget, whether it's The Chosen or an HVAC company, there are foundational principles that exist across all of those businesses. But what made The Chosen unique was that it was a company built around a show. And that usually doesn't happen. It's usually Netflix has somebody selling a piece of content to Netflix, or Netflix contracts it itself, right? It gets it done for itself. There's no crowd-funded show that then you need to build a company around to market, distribute, and make the show. And that's what made this really unique. So how do you tie all of those things together and create a company that's sustainable? So that was a challenge from the moment I stepped in those doors.
Was it all crowdfunded?
The first season was from a traditional equity standpoint. So there are 16,000 people that own equity. They own 44% of The Chosen.
You're kidding.
Or it's actually called 5 and 2 Studios now. But yeah.
How much did you raise in that first year?
It was $11 million from 16,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah. And the average was $100. Then from there, to make the future seasons, our distributor at the time was VidAngel. They became Angel Studios. And they figured out a way to get people to contribute to the show in a way called Pay It Forward. Pay It Forward was not was a purchase. It wasn't an equity investment. It wasn't a donation. It was the premise was, if you love this show and you want other people to watch the show and you want the show to be made so other people can watch the show, and if you feel compelled to do so, pay it forward so that those things can play out. While it wasn't your necessarily prototypical crowd fund in which your people are buying equity in the business, they were funding the future of the business through this mechanism called Pay It Forward.
I have a sister who owns a theater, and it's a live theater, and it's such a unique business to own because you have so many employees that are being paid minimum wage or not being paid at all because they're obsessed with the mission and the community impact of what that theater is doing.
Yep.
I anticipate there are some similar things, like just how you described how you guys sourced funds.
Yeah.
People wanted to pay it forward because of the message of The Chosen. I'm guessing in large part, they're not going to do that for other shows that they're watching on other platforms. Can you talk about that dynamic of being able to lead a company that needs metrics, needs people to perform, and also has people that are there for an altruistic, I want to fill this gap?
Well, first of all, you have to tell people that it's not a ministry, right? When they, a lot of people paid it forward and thought it was a donation, so who knows what they did on their tax return. Honestly, Dallas was really good at that. If you're unfamiliar, he would do live streams pretty regularly, whether it was around episode releases or when we were releasing new merchandise or some piece of new content. So he was really good at communicating to the audience the needs of the organization and pairing the fact that we were a for-profit company, or it is a for-profit company, with a missional aspect. It was very challenging, and I imagine it's challenging this day to bring along the people to continue to realize that it is a for-profit business that, yes, makes a show about Jesus, and there is a missional component to it.
So how do you, someone listening that's going through that challenge, how do they approach that challenge? Is it the people they hire? Is it how they position the company? Is it, what suggestions do you have to them?
That's a really tough question. I think it's a combination of all of those things. Because it's a for-profit business, we couldn't interview people and say, do you love Jesus? So we kind of...
Were there people, were there atheists on staff, agnostic? Were there people that weren't thrilled with you can't work at Starbucks unless you drink coffee, but I don't know how they figure that out. But is it Howard Schultz? He said, when I take someone to go to a Starbucks restaurant and they don't drink coffee, they say, yeah, it's not for me.
Sure.
I fire them. And it's like, how did you guys approach that dynamic?
Great question. Well, let me back up a little bit and it'll make sense. I'll bring us back around. So there was the company, The Chosen, right, which is now 5 and 2 studios, and then the production. And they run in two different ways. So most of the people that we hired were believers. And again, we didn't ask if they were, they just were, right? Actually, I wasn't a believer when I started. So we can unpack that if you want. It really wasn't important to us if you were or you weren't, and it couldn't be important to us just because we were a for-profit company. It ended up being that many of the people, or most of the people that we hired, were believers, with the exception to me. Now, on the production side, that has all walks of life, right? It didn't matter. All we cared about was, is the show consistent? Is the show telling the message that Dallas wrote in the scripts? And is that showing up on screen? And is it moving people? It didn't matter what background you came from. We just mattered what the output was, because some of the best people are not believers, right? And some of the worst people are believers. So that was kind of our ethos, is believe in what you want to believe. As long as the product stays the same and we're all pulling the rope in the same direction, that's what matters most.
That's such a fascinating insight. You got hired to be the COO for The Chosen, not believing in Christ.
Yeah. So my mother was raised Roman Catholic, and I didn't like how restrictive it was. Neither did she. I mean, when we were growing up, she said, here's nature, here's nurture, you decide. We celebrated high holidays, but we were not devout by any means. I'm from the Northeast, as we said earlier, and it's people don't necessarily wear their religion on their sleeve there. What I've come to find out moving to California now to Utah is, and working a lot in Dallas, it's a lot more prevalent outside the Northeast. So it really wasn't a way of life of me where I grew up. Then I met my wife on Bumble, 2018. She was a believer. It was important to her that I was too, She had dated a lot of jerks that believed in Jesus, so I think she had enough of that and gave me a chance, even though I wasn't a believer at the time. And she knew I'd come around. I think she prayed obviously about that I'd come around. But so I get hired at The Chosen, and I had an opportunity to sit down with Dallas Jenkins and Dallas's wife, Amanda Jenkins. Not only do they write the scripts, but they also write the devotionals and the Bible studies. This was the first opportunity I had to sit down at a kitchen table, but mostly their kitchen table, and ask questions that I never really felt the ability to ask before, or someone that I could actually answer the question. I just went in with them. This was very early on. This was 2020, and there were, 4 employees. And I was hanging out in Dallas's house, sitting at his kitchen table and asking, hey, how does this work? Can you explain this to me? This just doesn't make sense to me. Can you make this make sense? And Amanda's awesome. Like, if you get a chance to talk to Amanda Jenkins, talk to Amanda Jenkins. I remember being and then past that point, a couple months later, we're in Dallas. We're leaving some meetings, and I'm sitting with one of the founding partners of The Chosen in his car, or in a car on the way back to our hotel. And I just felt compelled in that moment to give myself to the Lord with him. So not with my wife, with a guy that I had known for maybe 6 months, and then a couple months into my job as COO of The Chosen, because it just felt right. And I had gotten the answers to the questions that I needed.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome, man.
That's so cool. Yeah, interesting dynamic being on the Northeast and then other parts of the country where religion is such a cultural aspect.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah. And for me, it was the fact that I'm not in control. That was really helpful, because a New Yorker wants to control everything, right? And when you realize that you can't and you don't, that's a huge weight off your back, right? And now I have 3 kids, 3 daughters, 3 beautiful daughters. And, we're raising them, to know the Lord as well. And I think it's great that they have that. I mean, my 2-year-old asks me to pray every night. I don't know that she knows what it means yet, but the fact that she's asking us to pray every night, I love that.
So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, man.
You have this product that has a massive lagging metric, which is viewership, all the way at the end of mass amounts of production and casting and sets and everything. How do you, part of why I love startups and business is because I can have an idea, and then with the AI tools that exist today, I can go hop on Lovable or like Figma, build the idea, go and pitch it to somebody, say, hey, I'll give you a discount if you'll buy this from me. Currently, it's going to be ready in 3 months, and then they'll buy it. Or even a product, right? You can go and create a protein drink, whatever you want, brand it, give people samples and say, hey, can we get some pre-orders from you and start collecting? The question is, how do you manage that dynamic when the lag result is such a long tail? How do you know what the leading indicators are to get the best result a year and a half or 2 years later?
Cool, man. Well, I'm reacting because the film business is very unique compared to how you just explained.
It's total opposite.
Yeah, consumer packaged goods. Well, that was why the equity raise was done at the very beginning. You needed money on the front end, right? Dallas created the pilot episode, so it's called The Shepherd. It's on YouTube. You can go watch it, or the Chosen app. That was the pilot episode of The Chosen. So he had created that on a shoestring budget for his church in Elgin, Illinois, and just a Christmas little film that he had done for his church ended up turning into what we all know today as The Chosen. And so it was a little bit of an investment from his church there in Elgin. In order to make it into a show, though, you had to raise the money. So where was the money going to come from? That's where Angel Studios, formerly VidAngel, came into play. They had a captive audience that we could market the show to, show them the pilot and say, hey, if you want to make this, you need to invest in this company. So that was to get it started. Then from there, it was all about cash flow. So what are other ways that we can monetize the business beyond the core content that's going to keep us afloat in between seasons? There's also a lag time between when you make the show and when you show the show, right? Yeah. So you have to balance those. So in the early days, Pay It Forward was used to fund the show or fund the making of the show, and merchandise existed to keep us afloat, right? And so it was anything, it was T-shirts. This came later, much later, but like I still use this to this day. I love this thing. So things like this with, the word mark here on the front and the 3 fish here on the back. And this came to be around season 3. Well, a significant portion of the funding came from merchandise to pay salaries and keep the business afloat in between. So I would say it's you got to be able to diversify yourself a little bit and not be so reliant on your one revenue stream to make through those lulls.
The founders of, I think it was Airbnb, they needed to get funding. They couldn't figure it out, and they sold Obama O's. And who was Obama running against? Was he running against Bush? Whoever Obama was running against. Anyways, they rebranded and sold all of these things and made like $40,000, and that it got into the next part.
Right.
And the investors were so impressed with that was one of the biggest reasons that they invested and said, okay, these guys are in that FIFO camp.
FIFO, yeah. Well, I also have to give props to Angel Studios and VidAngel. Season 1 was released. It was behind a paywall. Nobody paid for it.
Where did that money come from?
That came from the 16,000 people investing $11 million.
So you said no one paid for it. It was
after the fact. So the show was made and it was put out on VidAngel's platform, and it was behind a paywall where you needed to pay to watch it.
Oh, interesting.
Nobody paid for it. So they said, this is the word of God. We need to give it away for free. So let's give it away for free, but also create a way for people to contribute to it if they love it. And then Pay It Forward was born.
So the paywall is pay, then you can watch the show.
That's right.
No one was paying for it.
That's correct.
And they said, we'll get rid of the paywall. People watched it, loved it, and then paid it forward.
Yeah. So they gave it away for free. And it's still free to this day. There's windows, so like it'll be on I think there's an exclusive with Amazon now. So if you ever an Amazon Prime member, you can watch it. But then eventually it will wind up on the chosen app and it will be free.
Because it's so fascinating to me. I have a relative who there's a few people in my life that do tons of church work. And I heard once the any church, the one I'm familiar with is the LDS church, and the infrastructure is insane. Like the amount of layers and levels and organizational complexity that exists blows my mind. Like taking a congregation on such a massive scale. And I've talked to the people in those roles, and one of the statements I've heard is God's ways are not your ways. And so I've thought about it, like when I've approached service in a church setting, how do I need to change my approach from everything that I've learned in business and life and study? How do I need to change how I'm showing up? Because my ways are not God's ways. And so I've talked to a couple of those people, and the question that I've asked them is, as you're seeing the inner workings of something that seems organizational, like operational, that you could go get an MBA and optimize, the question to them has been, have you seen God's hand in ways that have shown you how God's ways are not man's ways in the operation of this organization?
Yeah.
Same question for you.
We call them Red Sea moments.
Okay.
So we felt there were so many external pressures that brought us to the edge of the Red Sea, and either we were going to get killed or the sea was going to part in front of us. And when we just put that faith in who we have to put faith in, the Red Sea parted.
Can you share one of those experiences?
So it's really expensive to make shows. We've established that, right? And every minute of every day is imperative, because if, let's say it's raining and we have to shoot outside, I'm still paying people even if they're not showing up to work today. I have to pay for their hotel. I have to pay for their food. I have to pay for their travel. That obligation does not stop. But now I then need to do it another day, right? And that it eats into my contingency. Every budget has a contingency, but sometimes you spend the whole contingency. So there was a moment, season 2, where we had to film this. I think it was actually the fish scene in season 1, where there was fog over this body of water that we were shooting on, and you couldn't see.
Where was that shot at, by the way?
In Weatherford, Texas.
Okay.
Yeah, outside of Dallas. And so you couldn't see this far in front of your face, like if you put your hand here. And we were running out of money, running out of time, and there's all this fog, and we have to get this shot. We've got all the actors there. We've got everybody's down there, right? It takes a lot to move everybody too. It costs a lot. And so when you're there, you need to get the shot. So we're getting to the last moment that we can actually do the shot. We're losing daylight, and it's just not going to happen. And all of a sudden, either wind happened or somebody had a little bit of divine intervention. The fog cleared, and we were able to make the shot.
Dude, thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome. Yeah.
So now you've transitioned out of the Chosen.
Yep.
You started Alpine Consulting.
That's right.
You help businesses scale in a myriad of different ways.
Yep.
Can you give a 30-second value prop of what you do for businesses?
Anything you need. So I said this earlier to you when we were setting up here, but my highest and best use is not building IKEA furniture. But if that's what it takes to get your business to the next level, well, then that's what it takes. I think my value prop is being able to jump into a bunch of different areas. I pride myself on being a generalist in that if you need marketing help, great, let's do that. If you need go-to-market strategy, great, let's do that. If you need to tear down your operational systems and you don't have an operating system, great, let's tear it down and build it. If your finances are in a shambles or are in shambles and your financial reporting stinks, let's fix that. So no matter what it is, I can probably speak into it and operate it. That's my value prop.
Love it. You sound like an integrator. Have you read the book Traction?
Yes, I'm an integrator. Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Someone has a vision and you turn it into reality.
Yes, and I love that too. I love having a visionary who's like, this is what I want to build. I'm like, great, give it to me. Let me build it.
Are you you're only doing stuff fractionally and advisory and consulting? You're not looking for, someone's listening like, oh my gosh, I need an integrator in my business. They should not hit you up for a full-time role. Hit
me up. Let's figure it out. I mean, we talked about this earlier, but W-2 sounds great, but I like to march by the beat of my own drum, and it'd have to be the right opportunity for me to say that I'm willing to give up the other things that I'm working on that I'm super passionate about to focus on one opportunity. But I'll never turn down a conversation. If we need to talk, let's talk and we'll figure it out.
What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
I'll give you my cell phone number,
Okay.
203-233-2423, 203-233-2423. You could text me if you call me. I have a spam blocker, so you won't get through. So text me first.
Perfect.
or adam@alpineconsulting.co, not com.co, adam@alpineconsulting.co.
That phone number is still that Connecticut number, isn't it?
You got it.
We have some customers in Norwalk.
Yeah, it's funny. My the bullpen at Northwestern Mutual, I left so many voice messages on people's phones with that phone number that all my coworkers memorized my phone number.
Love it.
Yeah, and it's been the same one since I was 16, so I'll never get rid of it. Yeah.
Okay, we wanted to discuss, this has been awesome. Thank you for everything you've shared.
Yeah.
We wanted to go deep on something, just touch on it that you're passionate about. And you said what's something you've been ideating on recently is having your strengths and your weaknesses on both sides of the coin. Your greatest strengths are your greatest weaknesses.
That's right.
And figuring out how to navigate and balance that.
That's right. You know, with age comes or should come maturity and learning about yourself. You know, I want to give credit to Dallas Jenkins because he's the one who told me your greatest strengths are also your greatest weaknesses. And one of mine would be how fast I am. When I need to sprint, I can. And in a business setting, that can be really good, but it can also be really bad. And so just as I become more mature as an entrepreneur, as a dad, as a husband, it's knowing when to slow down, knowing when to throttle up, right? Knowing when to downshift, to speed up, knowing when to coast, right? That's something I'm always working on, and I'm working on even more today, just because I need to set an example for my three girls. And if you operate too quickly, man, you can create a mess.
How do you figure that out when you need to shift up and shift down or stay in neutral?
Taking a step back and saying, what does this task require? Does this require me to sprint, or does it require me to slow down and really be analytical about this? And that comes with maturity. Because in the past, I wanted to please people. And yes, that's important to a certain extent, but I think you got to get it right over pleasing people all the time.
I've been obsessed with this idea of being able to have two conflicting characteristic traits at the same time, or also I originally heard it with the ability to hold on to two seemingly conflicting thoughts, because there's no such thing as conflicting thoughts. All things are true. If not all things are true, but all truth can coexist together. Mm-hmm. But there's often times where I see two things. It's like those two things are both right, but I don't see how they go together. And I love trying to hold on to both of them at the same time. So I've been trying to have empathy and a killer instinct at the same time.
Okay.
But I'm curious on your opinion. Does it water down if I have more empathy? Is it going to water down that killer instinct that's necessary in some business or some athletics?
I think you could if you let it. I think it's important to be empathetic. That's something I have a problem with sometimes. I think if you let your empathy overtake your killer instinct, then you'll be paralyzed. It's necessary to have that internal conflict, but just know how to stay in the middle would be what I would tell you, right? Because like when your kid's bad, you want to discipline them, right? But you also want to understand why they were bad.
I want to figure out how to have both to the max or whatever degree is necessary. So I don't want to be lacking a killer instinct and lacking empathy.
Okay.
I want to have both in their fullness and figure out how to have them both coexist.
Well, what if you bring your wife into the picture? She can be the empathetic one and you could be the killer instinct one. Then you don't have to worry about it.
I like that.
Right?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Adam, this has been awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, dude.
I have one more question,
Bring it.
which is the question we finish every podcast with. And I'll give you two questions. You can answer either one. One is, if you could talk to yourself 10 years ago, what advice would you give yourself? The other is, if you don't want to answer that one, you can say, if you were talking to yourself 10 years in the future, what would your future self likely tell you today?
My past self I'd say, slow down, be persistent, be consistent, and enjoy the journey. Those things I think I've done really well at over the past few years or past 10 years. And then my future self, what I'm going to tell my future self?
What would your future self tell you
Today? I think the same thing. Be persistent, be consistent, enjoy the journey, because it'll be over before you know it.
Love it. Dude, this has been awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you, man.